What do you mean it costs $200 to fix a button? That sentence kept echoing in Carson Reid's head as he stared out the office window of his headquarters, 10 floors above the city. He built the smartphone repair business from a tiny booth in a mall kiosk into a network of 20 stores across 3 states. He still remembered fixing a cracked screen with nothing but a heat gun, a razor blade, and patience. Back then, honesty mattered. Now, he wasn't so sure. His assistant had just passed along a voicemail, some frustrated guy complaining that his grandma had been charged $200 to fix her phone power button, only to find out later it was a 5-minute cleaning job. Carson didn't want to believe it, but this wasn't the first time he'd heard something like that. Lately, the customer reviews were slipping. A few 1-star ratings trickled in. Words like scam and ripoff started popping up next to his company's name. Still, he didn't trust that anymore. If I don't see it myself, I won't know what's real, he muttered. So he made a plan. Carson had never personally met most of the techs or store managers in his newer locations. That was partly by design. His leadership team handled hiring. And honestly, he hadn't stepped into a repair counter in over a year. He was just a name on the emails. He picked store 14, the one in Westwood. It was one of the busiest. He looked up the staff roster. No one would recognize him. He grew out his beard a little, wore prescription glasses instead of contacts, and added a slight Midwestern accent. The corporate office created a fake new hire profile for Chris Reynolds, a transfer trainee from another state. He even had a fake work history and reference notes. By Thursday morning, he was standing in front of the Westwood store's back entrance, holding a worn backpack and a coffee. He felt ridiculous. A tall, heavy-set guy with tired eyes opened the door. "You the transfer, Chris?" "Yeah, that's me," Carson said. "Name's Trent. I'm the manager. Come in, drop your stuff in the break room. We'll get started." The store looked clean, modern. Simple layout front counter, waiting area, glass shelves with phone cases and chargers. But the energy was off. No one smiled. A girl behind the counter was scrolling her phone while a customer waited with a cracked iPhone. Carson sat through a rushed orientation with Trent. "We're busy, so just watch today," he said. "Tomorrow, I'll let you handle some diagnostics." The first few hours were quiet, until a teenage boy walked in holding a phone with a black screen. "Just died on me," the kid said. Trent took it, glanced at it, and then looked at the boy. "Battery's shot, gonna cost you $180. Carson squinted. That model had a known issue with dirty charging ports. He gently leaned in. "Mind if I look?" Trent shrugged, annoyed. Carson took a flashlight, checked the port, and saw a clump of lint. He used tweezers from the tool tray, pulled it out, plugged it in, and the screen lit up. "It's charging," Carson said. The kid's eyes widened. "Seriously?" Carson nodded. "Just lint. Happens all the time." Trent's face tightened. "All right, cool, guess you got lucky. No charge," he said, waving the kid off fast. When the boy left, Trent pulled Carson aside. "Don't do that again." "Do what?" "Undercut a sale. We got goals to hit. You're not here to play hero." Carson kept his face calm. Inside, his blood was boiling. The rest of the day made things worse. He watched another tech, a guy named Tyler, tell a woman her screen needed replacing. Carson saw it was just a loose connection. She paid $150. Tyler winked at Trent. "Another one down." Carson's stomach turned. At closing time, he sat outside on a crate behind the store, staring at the sky. He felt sick. This wasn't just a bad apple. This was systemic, and he'd let it happen. He thought of his daughter Harper, who always asked why he worked so much. "Because I'm building something honest," he always told her. Tonight, that felt like a lie. Friday started with a quiet tension in the air. Carson, still wearing the name tag that said Chris, walked through the back door just before opening. The break room smelled like old coffee and fried food. A small whiteboard on the wall listed the week's shift coverage. 2 names were scratched out and replaced with arrows and question marks. Someone had clearly quit recently. Trent was already at the counter, hunched over the register. He didn't look up. "You're on intake today," he said flatly. "Keep it moving. Don't let people stand around yapping." A girl named Marcy, who had barely spoken to Carson the day before, gave him a strained nod as she passed a charging cable to a customer. Her eyes were red around the edges. She looked like she hadn't slept. The first customer walked in 5 minutes later. A middle-aged woman placed a cracked tablet on the counter, explaining that it was her son's and he used it for school. Carson took it carefully, flipped it over, and opened a diagnostic app on the store tablet. The digitizer was still responsive. The damage was cosmetic. Trent leaned over his shoulder. "That's a full replacement." Carson kept his voice steady. "It's just the top glass. The LCD's fine." "Same labor either way," Trent said under his breath. "Don't confuse her." Carson looked at the woman. "We could do a glass-only replacement. It'll save you about $80. She smiled in relief. "Oh, thank you. That makes a big difference." Trent didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His glare said enough. By midday, the lobby was full. Phones, tablets, laptops all lined up behind the counter, each tagged with a sticky note. Carson stayed busy, trying to keep the line moving, but he noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Tyler had started holding back completed repairs, waiting until the customer came in before finding an extra issue. In one case, he told a man his charging port was cracked when Carson had seen it working perfectly earlier. When the man hesitated at the additional charge, Tyler leaned in with a practiced tone. "Look, I can try to push it through warranty, but I'd have to say you brought it in like that. Your call." The man looked down, confused, then reluctantly handed over his card. Carson didn't say anything. Not yet. He needed to see more. In the back room, Marcy was crouched over a tray of phones, soldering a connector with a steady hand. Carson stepped in between customers. "You've been doing repairs all day." She didn't look up. "Since open, we're short. Tech number 3 quit last week." "When's your break?" She shrugged. "Didn't get one yesterday either." He checked the clock. It was past 2. "You want me to cover you for a bit?" "I can't leave the tray. The kid's phone is for a disability app. If I don't finish it by 3, he misses his rides for the weekend." Something shifted in Carson's chest. Back at the counter, Trent was chatting with Tyler while a young couple waited, holding hands and looking nervous. Carson stepped in. "Can I help you?" The guy nodded. "Her phone just keeps restarting. We tried everything." Carson asked a few quick questions, then ran the diagnostics. It was a bad firmware update easy fix with a flash and reset. He explained it would take about 20 minutes and cost $35. Before they could respond, Trent stepped in. "Actually, that model's got a logic board issue. Needs a board swap. $250. Carson didn't flinch. "I already ran the check. It's just a software loop. I've fixed 3 of these before." Trent's face shifted. "You think you know better than me now?" The couple looked between them, unsure. "I'm just going by what the tool says," Carson replied calmly. Trent waved him off and turned to the couple. "We'll take care of it. You'll get a call." Carson watched them leave, clearly unsure about what they'd just agreed to. An hour later, as Carson was restocking parts bins in the back, he overheard Tyler laughing. "Guy's trying to play White Knight. Give it a week, he'll figure out where the money is." Carson walked out without a word. He needed air. Outside, the sky was overcast, the kind of gray that made everything feel heavier. He pulled out his phone and opened the company's internal feedback system. Store 14 had the lowest customer satisfaction rating of any location in the region. He cross-referenced it with repair return rates. They were more than double the company average. Back inside, a man was standing at the counter, arms crossed. He was wearing a delivery uniform. "Hey," he said, "I dropped my phone off this morning, said it'd be ready by now." Trent didn't even look up, still in the queue. "I need it for work, can I just get it back?" Trent shrugged. "You want it back broken." Carson checked the tags. The phone had already been fixed by Marcy. It was sitting in the bin, labeled and ready. He picked it up and brought it to the man. "Here, it's done, sorry for the delay." The man looked relieved. "Thanks, appreciate it." After he left, Trent cornered Carson near the register. "Don't go over my head again." "I didn't, the work was done, he needed it." "You think we're running a charity?" Trent's tone dropped. "You're temporary, transfer or not. Don't make me push your paperwork back to wherever you came from." Carson stared at him. "You threatening to fire me for doing the job right?" "I'm telling you to stay in your lane." Carson didn't answer. He just walked to the back and sat in the break room, staring at the wall. Later that evening, after close, the team gathered to finish cleanup. Marcy was wiping down the tool trays. Tyler was counting the day's register. Trent stood by the door, keys in hand. "Everyone clear on tomorrow?" he asked. Marcy open again, Tyler mid, Chris full day, don't be late. Carson looked up. "We're down a tech, who's covering repairs?" Trent shrugged, "Figure it out." Carson waited until the others left before stepping into the front area alone. He turned off the lights one by one. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened display window. He had seen enough. This wasn't one or two bad calls. This was a culture. One built on squeezing money out of people who didn't know better. One that burned out good techs like Marcy and rewarded corner cutters like Tyler. And he had let it happen by trusting reports and spreadsheets instead of people. Tomorrow, it was going to end. Saturday morning, Carson was at the store an hour before opening, standing alone in the back room, still wearing the Chris name tag. He quietly inspected the repair logs from the previous week, scrolling through entries on the store tablet. The same patterns kept jumping out: repairs charged at full price for issues that took minutes to resolve, customers billed for parts that were never ordered, and warranty claims marked as ineligible without documentation. He heard the front door unlock. Marcy walked in with her shoulders hunched, balancing a takeout coffee tray in one hand and a plastic bag of cables in the other. "You're early," she said, surprised but not unfriendly. "So are you." She gave a tired nod. "Didn't sleep much. Got a backlog of battery swaps and a tablet with a broken housing that's been sitting all week." Carson followed her to the workbench. "How long have you been doing these solo?" She set down the tray. "Since Jenna left, which makes it 11 days, maybe 12. No one sent help. They said we'd get a floater tech. Never happened." Carson studied her face pale under the harsh fluorescent lights, lips pressed tight. She wasn't complaining. She was just trying to last. Trent arrived 10 minutes before open, sunglasses on, sipping from a tall drink. He didn't acknowledge either of them. Just walked to the front, flipped the closed sign to open, and sat at the main terminal. Saturday traffic hit early. The first customer came in with a visibly distressed look, holding a toddler on one arm and a phone in the other. "It just stopped turning on," she said. Carson offered to run a test while she settled her child on the bench. Within minutes, he diagnosed a basic power cycling issue. He explained it calmly, offered to fix it within the hour for a modest fee. She looked visibly relieved. Trent walked by just as she was paying. "That price is 40 short," he muttered. Carson didn't react. Trent leaned closer. "Standard for that model is 95, you charged 55. "I followed the service guide." Trent didn't answer. He walked away, jaw tight. By noon, the lobby was full. Tyler showed up late, chewing gum, and immediately disappeared into the back room. Carson found him 20 minutes later, scrolling through videos on his phone with a half-finished repair tray in front of him. "Customer's been waiting on that Galaxy since 11, Carson said, motioning to the tray. Tyler didn't look up. "It'll get done, chill." "Have you even opened it?" "I'll do it after lunch." Carson stared at him. "Lunch started when?" Tyler stood up, brushing past him. "Now, apparently." Carson glanced at the repair ticket. It had been marked Priority Rush with a time stamp nearly an hour earlier. He walked back to the front. Marcy was working on 2 phones at once while trying to answer a question from an older man who had brought in a dead tablet. "I got him," Carson said. She gave a quick nod and turned back to her tray. As Carson walked the customer through the issue, Trent interrupted from behind the register. "Chris, need you to clean out the display cases. We've got a vendor walkthrough next week." "Can it wait?" "Nope, do it now." Carson's jaw tightened. "There are 4 people waiting for diagnostic help." "I said what I said." Trent turned and disappeared into the back. Carson handed the tablet back to the customer. "Give me a few minutes. I'll be right with you." He grabbed a small key and began unlocking the front display cases. As he removed the accessories, he noticed half the phone cases had peeling edges, and the labels on the charging cables were mismatched. Marcy stepped beside him quietly. "He's been doing that all week." "Doing what?" "Assigning busy work when things get hectic. He disappears and we scramble." Carson closed the case and stood up. "What happens if you push back?" She didn't answer. At 2 o'clock, a man in a maintenance uniform walked in holding a cracked Android. He looked wary. "Someone called, said it was ready. Came yesterday and they said it wasn't." Carson checked the bin. The phone was there, tagged complete with a date that read Thursday. He handed it over. "Sorry for the confusion." The man looked at the receipt, then frowned. "I was charged for a new screen, but this scratch here, this was already on the phone. It's still there." Carson inspected it. There was no protective film, and the adhesive hadn't been disturbed. The screen hadn't been replaced at all. "Give me a second." He brought the phone to the back where Tyler was now half asleep in a chair, cap pulled low. "Did you log this phone as a screen replacement?" "Yeah." "You didn't replace it." "Looked fine, just buffed it, saved time." "You charged him for a new screen." "Yeah, and..." Carson held the phone up. "You're refunding him, now." Tyler stood, finally alert. "You don't give orders, you're just some temp." Carson looked him dead in the eye. "Not anymore." He turned and walked back to the counter. "Sir," he said to the customer, "you were billed for a repair that wasn't completed. That was wrong. We're issuing a full refund. Right now." Trent stepped in. "You don't get to make that call." Carson took off his glasses, reached into his pocket, and pulled out his real ID badge. "I'm Carson Reid. I own this company." The entire store went still. Tyler froze in the doorway. Marcy's hand trembled slightly as she lowered her tool. Trent stared at him, speechless. "I've spent the last 3 days watching this store push lies and cut corners. I've seen customers misled, employees overworked, and repairs falsified." Trent opened his mouth. "You're done," Carson said. "Clean out your drawer, leave your keys." Trent's face turned red. "You can't just..." "I just did. Step away from the terminal." Tyler edged toward the exit. "You too," Carson said. "Don't bother clocking out." Tyler hesitated, then muttered something under his breath and left. Carson turned to Marcy. You okay? She nodded slowly, still stunned. I didn't know you were. You're the only reason this store was still running, he said. That changes today. He walked the maintenance worker through the refund himself, apologizing in full. The man nodded and left, still processing what had just happened. Once the store was quiet again, Carson locked the front door. He turned to Marcy. We're closing early, you're going home after this. She opened her mouth to argue. No debate, you've carried enough. She looked down at her hands. What happens now? I'll be here every day this week. We're bringing in 2 techs from other stores and a new interim manager. Long term, we'll rebuild this team right. Marcy exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Carson sat down at the register and pulled out the week's reports. Let's start cleaning this up. They worked in silence, side by side, until the sun dipped low behind the storefront glass. On Monday morning, Carson arrived at store 14 before the lights were on. He used the spare key Trent had left behind and walked into the quiet space, flipping on the overheads one by one. The air still carried a trace of solder and cold metal, the kind of smell that clung to repair benches and never really left. He set 2 boxes on the counter. One was filled with fresh uniforms. The other held diagnostic tablets, still in shrink wrap. By the time the front street began to stir, the new interim manager, Liana, arrived. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, and had run one of the company's most consistent stores in Sacramento before relocating to help with the transition. Let me guess, she said, setting her bag down. Weekend chaos. Less chaos, more surgery, Carson replied. We've got deep rot here. I don't want bandages. She glanced at the schedule he'd printed and pinned to the back wall. 2 backup techs coming in today. He nodded. They'll rotate in until we can hire permanent staff. Marcy's staying. She's solid, but she's been holding the place together alone. I want her workload cut in half starting today. Done. What about the rest of the crew? Everyone else is gone. Tyler's terminal access was revoked Saturday night. HR has his termination paperwork. Trent's gone, too. His badge was deactivated. Liana nodded slowly, clearly understanding what kind of culture she'd be walking into. By opening time, Marcy walked in with her hoodie zipped up to her chin and her toolbox slung over one shoulder. She paused when she saw Liana behind the counter. This is Liana, Carson said. She's here to take over management until we get a new lead hired. You'll be working with her directly. Marcy looked uncertain. Am I still? You're not going anywhere, Marcy, Carson interrupted. But you're not pulling double shifts anymore. You'll have support. She glanced at the wall clock, then to the 2 techs arriving behind her, one a tall man with a quiet demeanor, the other a younger woman with a calm smile, then back at Carson. Are they staying? They're rotating in for the next few weeks, Liana said, checking her tablet. You get to breathe again. Marcy let out a single breath that sounded like it had been held for days. Okay, that's good. The first customer arrived just after 10. A college student with a water-damaged phone. Instead of being rushed or overcharged, Liana walked her through the intake process clearly, even offering to waive the diagnostic fee since the student had already tried standard drying methods. Carson stood near the rear of the store, by the parts inventory, watching the rhythm of the floor shift. The energy was different. No tension in the air, no sidelong glances, just people doing their jobs. He stepped into the back room as Marcy sorted through a tray of parts. Her hands moved more slowly now, not from exhaustion, but from care. There was no one breathing down her neck. You've been quiet, he said. I'm still waiting for someone to tell me this is temporary, she replied. It's not. She looked up for a moment, then went back to untangling a bag of charging jacks. It's weird. I don't know what to do with a normal day. You'll figure it out. By mid-afternoon, the store had processed 8 repairs without a single upcharge. The new techs worked efficiently, communicating openly and double-checking each other's diagnostics. Liana kept the pace steady, walking the floor, checking in without micromanaging. At one point, Carson stepped outside for a call from the regional ops director. When he returned, he found Marcy and the new tech, Anna, laughing quietly over a soldering mistake they'd caught before it became a problem. It was the first genuine laughter he'd heard in this store. He waited until close to sit down with Marcy in the back, with the door shut and the lights dimmed. "You know," he said, "when I started this company, I used to fix phones in a booth the size of that toolbox." "I've seen the video," she replied, "the one with the cracked iPad and the heat gun." He smiled, surprised, didn't think anyone watched those anymore. "Most new hires do. It's part of the onboarding." "I forgot that." She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. "You really didn't know what was happening here." "I knew something was off. The numbers were strange. Complaints were rising. But I wasn't hearing the truth from the people trusted, so came down to see it myself." She studied him for a moment. "What if you hadn't?" He didn't answer right away. "Then I'd still be telling myself we were doing good work." She nodded slowly. "I used to think someone higher up had to know, that maybe this was just how things worked." "It's not." "Good," she said, "because I couldn't have done it much longer." He stood and reached into his jacket. "This is for you." He handed her a sealed envelope. "What is it?" "Your promotion. Effective immediately, your lead technician. Higher pay, fixed hours, no more surprise closings or skipped lunches." She opened it slowly, eyes scanning the letter, then looking back at him. "You're serious?" "As serious as a dead battery in rush hour." She smiled faintly, shook her head. "Thank you." "You earned it." Later that week, Carson invited the remaining staff from Store 14 to the regional office for a closed-door feedback session. No cameras, no managers, just a table, notepads, and a promise that nothing said would be used against them. The stories he heard only deepened his resolve. A few days after that, a memo went out to all store managers across the company. It outlined a new policy. Every diagnostic must now include a second tech verification before a repair is quoted. No exceptions. Any store caught falsifying repairs would be reviewed for immediate management overhaul. Carson also introduced a new program, Customer Honesty Rewards. If any employee caught a misdiagnosis and corrected it in the customer's favor, they'd receive a small bonus and public recognition. The first award, it went to Marcy. In the weeks that followed, customer reviews for Store 14 began to shift. Not just higher ratings, but longer comments. People mentioned feeling respected, informed, not rushed or pressured. Carson didn't return undercover again. He didn't have to. Instead, he scheduled biweekly visits to random stores, unannounced, just to listen. Not inspect. Listen. One afternoon, as he stood next to Liana reviewing a shipment of new parts, she looked over and asked, "You think they'll hold the line when you're not looking?" "I think they will," he said, "because now they know I'm not just watching, I'm here." She nodded. "Good, because rot spreads fast if the roots are ignored." He looked around the store, clean counters, calm employees, a customer smiling as Anna showed her how to back up her photos. "Then we'll keep pulling the weeds," he said. Outside, the sun was beginning to dip behind the next building, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Inside, the store lights stayed bright.